Hello, everyone. Good afternoon in Bangladesh and good morning from Italy. So we have a wonderful session today, which is entitled The Imagined and Unimagined. We have our four presenters all present here. So without further ado, let me go straight into the presentations. Our first presenter is Debasmita Pal, Dr. Debasmita Pal, who's from Maharaja Agrasen College, Delhi University. Would you please present your paper, which is entitled Imagining the Bengali Nation, Tracing the Birth of Bangladesh Through Select Short Stories from East Pakistan or Bangladesh? Please, the floor is yours. I would request all my presenters to be please keeping to the time. Yeah.
So I hope I'm audible and the screen is visible to all of you.
Yes, yes.
A very good afternoon to all of you from India, from Delhi. So I am Dr. Debasmita Paul from Maharaja Agrasen College, University of Delhi. So and it's a privilege that I could get a chance to present my paper, some thoughts that I have in front of this August gathering that I have in front of me today. Thank you, sir. So I'll begin with my presentation. So this is titled as Imagining the Bengali Nation, Tracing the emergence of, just a second, so just give me a minute. Tracing the birth of Bangladesh through select short stories from East Pakistan, Bangladesh. So I'm not able to the screen. Yeah. So I begin with basically a historical, description of what has happened, a historical perspective. So if we look into the region of Bengal, so it begins, the undivided Bengal. So the region is located in the south of the Himalayan countries, okay, of Nepal, Sikkim, and Bhutan. The river Brahmaputra forms its northeastern boundary. The district of Dwarbanga, which is called as Dwarbanga, okay, means the gateway of Bengal, is situated in the northwestern boundary of Bengal. The Garo, Khasi, Jantia, Tripura, Chattagram hills lie in the south of the Brahmaputra and form the eastern boundary of Bengal. The plateau of Rajmahal, Santal Pargana, Chota Nagpur, Manbhum, Dalbhum, Keonjhar, Mayurbhanj in the west, while the Bay of Bengal forms the southern border of Bengal. And within this region, there has been an existence of multiple identities, okay, which can be attributed to the fact that over the various years, several races and several cultures have come and settled in the region. The process of creation of a homogeneous Bengali identity rather was created with the beginning of the modern period, we can say, with Bankim Chandra Chatterjee himself, talking about the necessity of having a history of the Bengalis. He said that Bangali manush hobe na, itihash dite hobe. So this history we would give the modern Bengali community an order, the collective we. I'm unable to, just slide my screen. That's the problem. So, just a minute. So this was with the creation. So when the creation of Bengali nation had started, okay, this is also the beginning of the Indian nationalist movement. And it was during this time that the partition of Bengal was actually declared in 1905. So the proclamation of the 1st September 1905 separated the districts of Dhaka, Maimansingh, Faridpur, Bakarganj, Tipera, Noakhali, Chattagram, the Chittagong Hills, Rajshahi, Dinajpur, Jalpaiguri, Rangpur, Bogra, Pabna, Malda from the Bengal division, and that was included in a newly created province which was named as the province of Eastern Bengal and Assam. So the presidency of Fort William was divided into two now, and we had a different province. So this was the first partition that happened of Bengal. It was in an answer to this partition that the Swadeshi and the Boycott movement was started. It was about the unjust division of the Bengalis. Rather, it invigorated the caste and caste system. Okay, the caste divide that was there, that was already present in Bengal, and that gradually took the shape of a communal divide. So there was,
Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Debosmita. You have less than 5 minutes left, so could
okay.
you please go into the main
Yeah,
points?
yeah. So this is, I'm just, so after this, so this led to the founding of the Muslim League and the and the Hindu Mahasabha. So gradually, with the coming in of the 1947 partition, so what happened was that, these fault lines that were drawn in 1905 somewhere, that went on to, create what was called as the two nations. Okay, East Pakistan, and then we had Bengal, which was in West Bengal, which was now part of India. However, it was during this time that the United Independent Bengal movement was also started in 1947, and with its main leaders as Shahid Sohrawardi and Sharad Bose, okay, a leftist leader, and they talked about the idea that we should have a rather a united Bengal rather than having two nations. Uh, Nevertheless, the partition did happen, and Bengal in India, whereas in the eastern Pakistan, they struggled at their own ends. So within India, we had the Ghoti Bangal conflict that was invigorated in the form of the native and the refugee crisis that was there. Okay, while in East Pakistan, it took the shape of what is called as the Bengali nationalist movement. Okay, in the form of the 19 in what began in on 21st of February 1952. Uh, Nevertheless, despite the fact that there was a commonality in language and culture, okay, which at one point of time, the Sohrawardi and Sarad Bose were trying to, look for and create a united Bengal. Okay, this, the two countries continued to remain as separate nations. So if this is the historical background, so what we can say actually is that theoretically what we can say is that that nations and nationalisms are basically imagined, and they are imagined into existence, and they're in rather these are very fluid boundaries, as Sudipta Kaviraj also talks about. So when we look into the short stories, and what I have, because we have less time, so I'll just summarize. So the short stories, if we look into them, so from 1905 to 1947, we have Sharad Chattopadhyay, he talk Abhagi's Heaven, okay, and Mahesh, wherein, and Tagore's The Solution. So in these short stories, what gets talked about more is that this divide on the basis of caste, class, and economy, okay, which takes the shape of a religious, of a communal divide. And this is what historically also gets projected. Similarly, when we go on to the stories that were written around 1947 and post 47, okay, we come to the Bangladeshi writer Selina Hussain, an evening prayer. This is a novel that she has written, okay, wherein she talks about this Bengali name that she gives. It is not an Islamized name, but a Bengali name that she gives Pratik, okay, to this child, okay, and where the idea is that somewhere religion is something which is not the dividing factor. Similarly, we have Hassan Hafizur Rahman's short story Two More Deaths, which talks about the futility of this entire act of partition. Okay, rather than what becomes more important is this human resilience, and this despite the undercurrent of the communal tensions being there, but human resilience and the communal harmony is something that somehow comes back into the foray. So Sayyid Waliludda's story, the story of a tulsi tree, Again,
Sorry
you
to
know,
interrupt. You
yeah.
have less than 2 minutes left. Yeah.
Yes,
Could you
I'm
just wrap
about
it,
to finish. I'm about to finish, sir.
please?
So then the other two stories that I have, this is from 1952 to 1971. Okay, so these are stories by Shaukat Usman. Alifa. Alifa is about, you know, again, the internal schisms and the dissensions that are there, okay, within the Muslim society in Pakistan. So it's talking about the cultural conflict that now evolves between the Bengalis of East Pakistan and the Bihari Muslims. Okay, so and this is where the Bengali nationalism is also, you know, seen as it seems to be, you know, growing here. And Selina Hussein's Looking Back, okay, is about, you know, the Viranganas and about the sacrifice that the women also made, you know, for the sake of this Bengaliness, okay, for this, you know, Bengali culture that they were now talking about. So I'm concluding here. So the process of creation of Bangladesh is a strong proof of the idea that nations are imagined. The short stories and the historical study of partitions of Bengal go on to validate what Shelley Fillmans, proposed that, you know, that they are basically contemporary process of state formation. The contests were between communities which were imagined into existence through the varied forces, political, economic, religious, cultural, and linguistic. However, it is observed that despite the commonalities that were there at several points that helped the Bengalis of the two sides to forge a common identity, however, post 1971, the same grounds, okay, were the points of distinction for Bangladesh and the Bengalis in India, and therefore the two regions have, continued to remain as distinct nations. Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Devasmita. Let us go straight into the next presentation here, which is going to be done by Dr. Mohammad Zakir Hussain, who's an assistant professor at Krishnath College. His paper is titled Reading Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children as a National Allegory. The floor is yours.
So am I audible?
Yes, yes, of course.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Very good afternoon to you all. I am Mohammad Zakir Hussain. I teach English at Krishna College, West Bengal. So the topic is national allegory. This segment, right?
Dr. Mohammad
Consider
Zakir Hussain, your voice is breaking. Something is
so
wrong with your internet connection?
Is it still breaking, sir? I mean, or shall I
Yeah,
switch
so
off
yeah,
my
sort of.
camera
Something
and
is wrong with your
will help
microphone,
my
or
connectivity?
yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Is it good enough, sir?
Uh, it's still breaking actually. I think he has been logged out. Shall we just wait for him another couple of minutes? Volunteer, would you please see whether he's already also here, Dr.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Zakir,
Yes, yes,
please.
I'm back. I think I got disconnected.
Dr.
Is it
Zakir,
okay, sir,
let me
now?
make a suggestion here. Would you not please
Yes.
present your slides? I think that is causing a problem. There is a problem with internet connection. So would you just make a presentation without your video or anything?
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Am I visible now?
It's okay. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, sir. Okay, fine. So, so I will begin with Fredric Jameson's controversial essay, right? Theoretical literature in the era of multinational sets out his theory of what he calls positioning it as a form of national allegory. So Jameson proclaims that third literature texts are early allegorical, and in a very specific way, they are to be read all national allegories, unquote. So since the publication of controversial essay in 1986, this essay has taken center in the debate about post-colonial world and post-colonial literature and their relationship to the traditional Western canon. Now, critics like Azaz Ahmed, in his essay, Jameson's Rhetoric of Otherness and the National Allegory, has in fact criticized Jameson for his reductionist views of this kind of literature, pointing out the problematics of the three worlds on which Jameson's argument rests, and the issue in his book. Now, mainly this has the description of the first and the second world on basically, primarily on political, like socialist, whereas his description of the third purely experimental nations that have been experienced colonization. Now coming to the fourth part talk that is the term national allegory. So denotes a kind of a narrative in which nation occupies some narrative. So with Rushdie, allegory for creation of a nation space. The narrative keeps on vacillating between and national historiography. So, and the novel establishes a relationship between Salim Sinai, whose transition corresponds to that of the nation. The nation is partly embodied by Salim and partly remains a nation state under Nehruvian leadership. For linking of an individual to the nation and public to the private, the novel is framed to allegory. And this assimilation of public and private combines to construct a criticism of contemporary and defies any modular idea of a nation state. So in this way, Midnight's Children comes closer to Fredric Jameson's definition of national allegory, where he says, I quote, the story of the private individual destiny is always an allegory of the situation of the public, third world culture and society, unquote. So in a national allegory, the personal is the national. As we move on, or as you go along, a particular text, it's a part history, it's a part autobiography, it's a part theory, part poetry, part music, magic, realism, and whatnot. And it has also been observed that Rushdie's novels are in fact spread almost all the major parts of the globe, beginning from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and USA. And this particular text, is a microcosm of Indian history, politics, religion, and the landscape of Kashmir, where the narrative begins and ends, has been delimited by the author in detail. And the places mentioned in the text directly or indirectly immense, impact on the narratives. And they help us know more about it, to understand Midnight's Children, not only because of Salim's face resembling Nabia. Now, besides that, the novel invokes important historical moments, from the infamous Amritsar massacre to the inauguration of the sovereign socialist and democratic Republic of India with Jawaharlal Nehru as the language rights of the 1950s, the Indo-China War of 1921, and finally the long dark midnight of Indira Gandhi's imposed in 1975. So the two midnights, those of independence agency, frame Salim's historical account. So Rushdie's narrative starts 30 years before and proportionally 30 years after the independence. And the most interesting.
Okay, I think we have lost him. All right, let us go to our next presentation because his voice was also breaking all along, so we couldn't even hear most of the things that he said. So let us go to the. Let us
Sir,
move on.
Zaki
Yes,
sir is back. No, but Zaki signs.
it's okay. It's
So
okay. Let us move to the. Sorry, Mr. Zakir, Dr. Zakir, your voice is breaking all along, so we can't actually hear anything that you are saying from your end. Your bandwidth is very low, so there has been a problem. So we recognize that you have come here and presented, but we are not going to continue with your presentation. Uh, Sorry for that. Let us go for the next presenter here, who is Mr. K. Ahmed Alam, who's an associate professor at International Standard University, and his paper is titled Selina Hossain's Bhumi o Kushum, Land and Flowers, a fictional discourse on the statelessness and statehood of the then Dohogram and enclave. The floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And my slide is visible?
Yes, of course.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, all the distinguished people present here. As you have heard, my topic is Selina Hossain's Bhumi o Kushum, Land and Flowers, a fictional discourse on the statelessness and statehood of the then Dohogram Club. I'm K. Ahmed Alam, Associate Professor, Department of English, International Standard University. I is presenting my paper. First of all, the objective of my paper. This study attempts to show the victimization of the dialectic between statehood and statelessness witnessed and experienced by the residents of the then Dohogram enclave, which was caused by modern nationhood and statehood through the 1947 partition in the decolonial phase, as Selina Hossain textualizes in her fictional work Bhumi o Kushum. To do so, the paper applies the critical tools of cultural studies relevantly. Selina Hossain, a prolific and acclaimed Bangladeshi author of 45 novels and 16 collections on short stories, is an awardee of so many prestigious prizes for her contributions to literary works dealing with life, land, and labor of the othered for existence. Out of her novels, Bhumi o Kushum is set in Dohogram. The setting and historical background of the novel. Dohogram is one of the then Bangladeshi enclaves in India. Just a minute. The 1947 partition, demarcated by the Red Cliff boundary, Commission created 111 enclaves under the statehood of newly independent India inside then East Pakistan, and 51 enclaves under Pakistani statehood inside India, which were the territories of the then princely states under the British Raj. Dohogram was a Pakistani enclave from 1947 to 1971 and a later Bangladesh enclave. Consequently, it suffered from statelessness till 26 June 1996, when Dohogram, along with Angurputa, was allowed to use the Indian territory Tinbika corridor to become connected with Patgram Upazila of Bangladesh in the light of the 1947 India Mujib Fact. The dialectic between statelessness and statehood of Dohogram negatively affected its residents in terms of their personal relationships, identity, basic needs, and human and constitutional rights, and also the enclave issue influenced Indo-Bangla bilateral affairs. Here you find the map. There you find the location also, Dohogram. It is surrounded by Indian territory. Here, the color of Indian territory is shown as yellowish, and Bangladeshi part is shown as white. Next, you see another map, that is Tinbega corridor, okay, through which the Dohogram people right now can enter the Bangladeshi main part, that is Patgram Upuzila. The text Bhumi Kusum, which was published in 2010, and later it was translated into English and published in 2019 as The Land and the Flowers. The novel articulates a land Dohogram, as I have already mentioned. Okay, it is victimized by the dialectic of statelessness and statehood for its being an enclave, its effects upon the people living here, and their individual and collective struggle for their personal and community causes, which involve their identity, survival, and culture. The novel fictionalizes that the protagonist of this novel, Manjila, along with the characters surrounding her, responds to the effects, and the fiction essentially becomes a discourse on statelessness and statehood in the Dohogram context. Therefore, the fictional text warrants a reading from the cultural studies perspective. Cultural studies, we can see it as a reading approach. Cultural studies aims to examine its subject matter in terms of cultural practices and their relation to power. Its constant goal is to expose power. Again, its objective is to understand culture in all its complex forms and to analyze the social and political context within which it manifests itself, unquote, Sardar and Loon. Then essentially in cultural studies, we have to consider power. According to Weber's definition, power is the ability to control others, events, or resources. Actually, we find here the Indian BSF, Border Security Force, also applies power to control the enclave or Sitmahal Dohogram Agorpota. And according to Foucault's understanding, power is based on knowledge and makes use of knowledge. That means power creates or recreates its own fields of exercise. And we also consider Althusian viewpoints about power. That means how a modern state can apply power, that is through apparatuses, ISA, that means ideological state apparatuses, and RSA, repressive state apparatuses. So in particular, RSA is also applied here by the BSF to control the Dohogram and its residents, what we see in the text. Moreover, we have to mention Ashish Nandi, who was considered as the father of South Asian cultural studies, okay? And he categorized cultural studies in his own term, that is knowing and being. It is very much important. And he also category locates himself with the victims of history and the casualties of an array of grand Western ideas such as science, rationality, development, and the nation state. And ultimately, the Dohogram Angurpota, okay, was victimized by the nation state, which was created through the separation, that means 1947 partition. A reading of Bhumi Kusum, the partition of 1947, as I have told you earlier, created the gaps that are psychological and ideological between the Hindus and the Muslims, as reflected through the conversation between Manjila and Aurobindo, though they were compromising sexually in the very opening of the chapter of the text. In the same text, we also find here another episode about the village Chandraghona. The village Chandraghona under Kurigram district became an enclave inside India, where Manjila's mother Khadija grew up. Okay, after returning from Chandraghona, she cries, quote, "Now my brothers have no country. We are in a prison. We are imprisoned, although we are the inhabitants of an independent country. Oh God." She realizes, okay, the consequence of Chandraghona because it becomes it became an enclave. We also find another episode in the same text, Khadija's brother, Gofur.
Excuse me, you have 2 minutes left. Yeah.
Okay.
Would you please wrap it up?
Okay. So Khadija's brother, Gofur, realized the same. Our shopping, income, medical treatment, and schools all will be closed. And you also find Ghulam Ali's case. Ali wanted to explain the causes and consequences of the emergence of enclaves. To him, without knowing the land, one cannot grow flowers on the land. Actually, he raised an identical question. And we also find here Ghulam Ali's mother questioned the very notion of gender issue. And actually, Bhumia Kushum narrates the marginalized of the marginalized. And we also find here Nite, another character who was the victim of placelessness. Actually, here people are marginalized. Their marginalization is double marginalization, no doubt. Okay, Tahir, another character, he was the victim of a special shifting due to his statelessness, and that's why he had to shift from McLegan's to Dahogram. Actually, Manjila was involved in the extramarital relationship. She became a mother. Their poverty and personal life were theirs in the Sid Mahal, that means in Inclab. The BSF built border posts surrounding the Hogram also. Okay, people also protested, and their Hindu families also first time did not leave the land. Later they decided to leave the land, and they wanted to be the refugees in Kuslibari under Kuch Bihar district. And we also find a very sad event here. Malati, she was raped, and she was actually awfully injured. Later, she died also without any medical treatment. So actually here people fought for survival. However, they had aesthetic sense that are their songs and musical instruments. We also find another case here, that is Moshal Danga, another enclave here. Their Mannan's wife was kidnapped by the BSF Jawans. And finally, we find in the text Bornomala, an inhabitant of the Hogram, wanted freedom of the land. That means meaning its right of statehood, carrying a basket of flowers before the BSF near Tinbiga. This is very much significant. Finally, we find Selina Hussain in her Bhumya Kushum interrogates the binary opposition, that is statelessness and statehood, which created the identical crisis and deprivation of the rights of the people of the Hogram Angorkota. She also articulates the alienation, annihilation, and the crisis of nationhood of the other, the Dahogram people. They are the victim of history, colonialism, and even decolonization. Okay.
Yeah.
And Selena also, just a minute, and narrativizes that the disempowered remain disempowered. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for keeping to the time. We will now go on to our next presentation, which is also the final one by Anupam Kamal Sen and Shushmita Roy. Anupam Kamal Sen is a PhD student at University of Eastern Finland, and Shushmita Roy is a lecturer at a leading university. Their title is The Obsessive Construction of Mythic Bangladesh in Popular Culture. Would you please go ahead? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Can you please stop sharing your screen so that I can share?
Have I stopped here? I think I have.
No, you haven't. You haven't. We can still see your.
Just a minute.
Please.
Just a minute. I'm trying to stop it. I think I have stopped it.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. I think that you can see my screen now. Is it visible? And am I audible to all?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so this is our collaborative presentation, and the title of our work is The Obsessive Construction of Mythic Bangladesh in Popular Culture. I, Shushmita Roy, am gonna present some slides, and Anupam, my co-presenter, will present the last part of our presentation. So the purpose of our work is to view the obsessive construction of Mythic Bangladesh in television advertisement. We have found that there are so many advertisements in the 15-year celebration of Bangladesh under the tagline Beautiful Bangladesh. So as a part of our work, we have selected a representative TVC And we try to analyze these TBCs, and we argue that these portray an image of beautiful Bangladesh, where Bangladesh always appears as pristine, sacred, ecologically balanced, politically correct, as if it's all representation. We argue that vastly contribute to the reproduction of a mythic Bangladesh. To define mythic Bangladesh, it is a kind of narration where Bangladesh actually exists only to the imagination, which deny the real one. That means the everyday life of Bangladesh, the performative Bangladesh, to produce a tourist case. So let us see the, as I have selected the one ad, so I am just sharing that. It is a weak one, so I have just cut some of the moments and let me just share it. So can everyone hear that, please?
Not really.
Can you? Okay.
To go to.
Can you hear it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Laura, are you not going home for holiday? I don't have a home to go to. You know what our New Year is called in Bangla? What? It's Noboborsho. Noboborsho. Wanna see it for real? Of course. My roommate.
যতনে রাখিব মায়ায় বাঁধিব রাখিব নয়নে নয়ন
সহজ মানুষ ভোজে দেখ না রে মন দিব্য জ্ঞানে ভাবিরে অমূল্য নিধি
Welcome.
Wait. I need to pay money.
Nalagibo, gift for you.
Really? Oh.
How do you feel, Laura?
Feels like
Okay,
I found
thank
my
you.
home.
So, due to the time limitation, I have cut some of the parts, highlighting the key moments. So, if we see the advertisement, we have found there are some taglines such as nature is beautiful and harmony is beautiful. So under this tagline, we find that this kind of representation actually deny the spatio-temporal historicity of a place. That means in this kind of representation, history and the history of a landscape has no agency. And this kind of representation reduces Bangladesh or a nation into an aesthetic commodity. We don't have any objection to the claim that Bangladesh is beautiful. Rather, we try to problematize the claim that this kind of narration leads a nation into a package. It reduces itself into a package which is exportable to the foreign tourist. And to attract the tourist gaze, it is just creating a nation into such an imaginative way where the nation itself has no agency. Rather, it is only aesthetically imagined into existence. So I have just selected some of the newspaper cuttings. So in our everyday newspaper, we see the real image of a country. So here are some of the pictures where we can see that how the real performative Bangladesh is, everyday life is in Bangladesh. We can see in the first picture that the river is polluted, and we can also see that in the second and third picture that there are garbage of lots of garbage on the street, and how the city life actually is. So as we have seen in the advertisement that the nature is, so we can say that actually this kind of representation is a selective, not the real one. And if we see the another tagline was that harmony
let me just
Yes, sir.
let me just interrupt you here. You have less than 4 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm concluding. Okay, there was also another tagline that is harmony is beautiful. So if we look at in the newspaper every day, and if we look into the history that in the last 10 years, there were ethnic violence and other violence, religious violence also. So the way it is represented Bangladesh, I can say that it exists only in the imagination. So my co-presenter Anupam will conclude the session. That means the presentation. Please, Anupam.
Thank you, Shushmita. You have already mentioned a lot of things, so I'd like to add 2 points to this discussion, actually. First, what you say, the distance between pedagogy and performance. I'm calling it pedagogy because what we are taught actually in this case, what we are shown in this TVC. So that is pedagogy that comes to us as a narrative, and performance means our lived experience, what you showed in the pictures. So, and what we generally go through in real life. So I have borrowed these ideas from Homike Bhabha actually. And my point is clear that the concept of beautiful Bangladesh, quote unquote, is nothing but a narrative, which is actually being reproduced through such aesthetic representations that we find in these sorts of TVs, and which appears as an ideological possibility through such representational pedagogy. Pedagogy means they are just teaching us that this is how Bangladesh has looked like. And but importantly, this pedagogy, this narrative is ruptured while we go outside, we perform our daily life. The moment we try to experience what we are shown on the screen, when we try to catch it on the outside, it simply is gone. It's nowhere. It means the Bangladesh that we live through and the Bangladesh that we are presented in a package are negating each other. So I'm not giving here, I'm not giving it a Hegelian shape, rather I'm suggesting an everlasting gap between them. I mean, what we see on the screen and what we face in the reality outside. My second and last point is about the construction of tourist gaze. It means what can be seen and what should remain out of sight are two important factors, which is being determined by this kind of representations. As Shushmita has already mentioned that this is an exportable and manufacturable Bangladesh. It's like a package offer, a bag of exotic amusements along with aesthetic luxury. So there is no problem, as she has already mentioned, that in representing a beautiful Bangladesh, we do not have any objection to that. But it's a big deal when tourists are invited to the temptation of visiting an exotic land. It's a kind of an exotification which is being done through this kind of representation. The same happens to Pahar, our hilly areas of Bangladesh. All tourists go there to see the beauty of the landscape and to transcend their urban tired souls to pastoral peace without knowing that this is the real conflicting zone of Bangladesh, where army has cordoned all the areas and things like that. So our popular culture literally hides this. Popular culture, be it films, advertisements, literature, or TV dramas, everything. So only what we get is an obsessive construction of mythic Bangladesh, which actually doesn't exist, which only exists in aesthetics and in our imagination. Therefore, I think we need to keep on investigating these sorts of representations in our popular culture and challenge their authorities. So that's it. And Shushmita has already said that this is not the only TVC that we will find. Actually, there are many. So we have to keep on asking questions and challenging their authorities, representational authorities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for keeping to the time. Yeah, your time is just over, so you have kept to the time down to the last second. All right, so is there a question for any of the presenters, any observations or any comments that anyone would like to make here?
Yeah, I have a question for Shushmita Roy and Anupam Sen, if I could proceed.
Please, please.
All right, so there was a particular point in your presentation that really caught my mind when you talked about how this construction or this projection of Bangladesh basically separates the actual places from their spatio-historical background. Am I right? So basically, then you talked about Pahar in your concluding note. So I would like to say that, like, when it comes to the Pahar or the Pahari Elakas, like, our military has been aggressive in that region for a while now. And in doing so, they have been pretty violent and pretty colonizing in their nature, right? So
you have to be brief in your question.
So, well, my question basically is, you said that you don't oppose this representation, but I think this representation.
No, actually, the claim that Bangladesh is beautiful. We do not have any objection to the claim that Bangladesh is beautiful, because there is no kind of yardstick that by which the director is measuring that this is beautiful or this is not. So it's always subjective. So we do not claim that. We do not object to this particular claim when somebody says that, okay, this landscape is beautiful. We do not have any, but we have objection when the historicity and temporal reality of this particular landscape is completely robbed of in this kind of representations, and only presenting a mythic construction, a mythic Bangladesh, which only exists in aesthetics. So that's where our objection lies.
All right, but even then, this mythic representation actually what does, in my opinion, is erase the history of violence when it comes to many of these places, particularly when I'm talking about Pahar. In that sense, it hides violence from both inside our country and both for people outside of our country. And in that sense, it kind of whitewashes this violence. So in that sense, is not this representation a part of this violence itself? And in that sense, shouldn't it be opposed?
Yeah, it's participating to this normative representations of this country, which, I mean, it goes along with the apparatus of the states, which try to hide this kind of reality that is going underneath the surface. So when we investigate our popular culture, we see that the Bangladesh we find, it's actually, it's overshadows the violence.
It's sanitized.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that charged interaction. So do we have other questions here?
May I ask a question?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, the same question to Anupam Sen and Sushmita Roy. Yeah, it's a good presentation, but yeah, my point is mythic Bangladesh. So mythic is a very harsh word, I think, but beautiful Bangladesh and harmony, these are not untrue about Bangladesh, right? And at the same time, when you want to say that there should be the representation of absolute reality, but does it happen even from the developed countries? From the West. I mean, we know the reality of most of the countries around the world, but when you expect something like that, yeah. So what would you say?
Exactly.
About that?
I was just going to add that perhaps, I mean, the way you have presented your paper, it feels like that you are advocating for a very realistic presentation, which doesn't happen in popular media. You can respond to this. Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's it. How do you react to that?
Okay. My point is that actually our objective was to question the representations that happens in the culture industry. So popular culture, if we look at popular cultures, how popular cultures actually try to depict landscape, all the time they do that. They all the time try, because it is connected with neoliberal capitalism, that you come here, tourism is a kind of business. So, and this particular advertisements, they are actually promoting tourists, but particular tourists who have capacity to go to this kind of exotic places which have been built by the government for them in the hill areas. So come there and visit. So this kind of politics is there. So our target is to actually pinpoint that particular discourse which actually remains under the surface, and try to disclose the politics which is not visible actually. That's it.
Understood. Thank you. I think we have run out of our time. We can take one final question, maybe, if there is anyone. Okay, if no one has anything to say, I would just like to point out one, just a very minor thing in Dr. Devasmita Paul's presentation, which is you have talked about Hassan Hafizur Rahman's short stories and Shaukat Osman's short stories, but you have spelled their names incorrectly. Hassan Hafizur Rahman's name is Rahman, and Shaukat Osman's name is also spelled incorrectly. There is a particular feeling in Bangladesh that Indian people, critics, spell our names incorrectly. There is a kind of outrage in Bangladesh about it. So that is just a minor point I wanted to make.
Actually, whatever spellings I have taken from, these are basically from the short stories, the translations that I have taken up. So maybe there might be some changes there. So maybe that could be the reason. So if there are, so I'll check them and I'll make my changes.
I have checked already. So I'm telling you from what I have known. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. So we can conclude our session here. We had wonderful presentations. There was very beautiful discussion afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.